Okay, so I have two fantastic ladies on stage with me right now. Ira Singhal needs no introduction. We had a fantastic introduction. Someone who is in the IAS, in the services, and someone who trains people who prepare for the IAS, right? So Saloni is an educationist, economist, and interviewer. She has spent a lot of years training people to get into the services. And I don't know how many of you have heard about the story of Ira Singhal. Selected in UPSC in 2010, selected in UPSC in 2011, selected in 2013, but not allocated IAS because of her 62% locomotor disability. But she did not give up. She challenged the decision in court against the commission. She did not give up. She went and wrote the UPSC once more in 2014. And in 2014, she didn't just win the case, she cracked UPSC in 2014 with All India rank 1. Ira Singhal, it's an honor to have you with us. A lot of people spend years and years preparing for the IAS. And I remember that when we all grew up, our parents gave us in Bangalore, you have 4 options because you're engineer, doctor, and then they would tell us, okay, if you're really smart, they're like, why you should be an IAS officer, you should be an IAS officer, right? Or the zenith would be, you have to be a pilot, right?
Okay.
So, it's such a privilege to have you with us.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the struggles. It wouldn't have been easy for you to give the UPSC so many times,
Right.
crack it, and still
Right.
not be able to be right there, which you achieved
Yeah.
with rank 1.
So I think just to give you a perspective of where I started from, I'm an engineer, like almost half of India, and then I'm an MBA, and I worked in the corporate sector as a strategy manager with Cadbury, and I think you can't find a sweeter job than that. So brilliant company, brilliant work, but I always had this thing about doing something for the nation, working for the society, working for the country, and so I thought, let me quit and give civil services. And like you mentioned, I was rejected. So when you give the exam, the Union Public Service Commission is the one that takes the exam and gives you a rank. Department of Personnel and Training is the one who allocates you a service
Correct.
basis the rank that you get. So basis my rank, I was supposed to get into the IRS, but not just the IRS, all the other services also rejected me, saying that we will not take someone with this disability. And if you're a person with disability, you kind of get used to being rejected and having to try again and again for everything. The world does not want to give you a chance. And that's true for people without disabilities also. But imagine adding on a disability on top of that and being a woman. So, what we call intersectionality these days. So nobody wants to give you a chance, right? And that is something that you learn right from childhood. You learn right from probably your first school admission. That you will have to make that extra effort. You will have to stand up and fight for yourself. That extra step is always needed. So somewhere, because I've always done it, I've had to do it. It wasn't such a, new thing in that perspective. But yes, of course, you don't expect that when you give an exam like this, and you don't expect it from the government, which is where the whole thing was. And to be honest, I think if it was just about me, I probably wouldn't have filed the lawsuit. What happened was that when this happened to me, I didn't even know that this had happened. I didn't even know that I had been rejected basis my disability. I started getting phone calls from other candidates saying, do you know what happened to you? And if you don't know something has happened to you, you start finding out what happened, right? I mean, imagine getting random phone calls saying, what happened to you? And you're like, wait, something happened to me? So then I started finding out, and that's when I figured out that this had happened. And I was, not just me, a lot of other people had been rejected. And I realized that I came from a financially well-to-do background, because remember, in India, disability is also a function of poverty in most cases, right? So I decided to fight it, and I thought maybe this is what life wants me to do. I came in to make a difference. I came in to serve. I came in to make other people's lives better. So maybe this is how I'm supposed to do it. So that's how I filed the lawsuit. And the strange thing is that it wasn't just the first attempt that this happened to me. It happened to me 3 separate times. every single attempt, I was getting selected by UPSC and then rejected by all the services except for the IAS, which was the only service which was going to take a person with my disability. I was getting rejected basis my disability, and
How would they inform you about the rejection? Would it be
so they send you a letter saying, sorry, even though you are selected, we cannot give you a service. We will not, because none of us wants to have someone like you in our job. And the crazy part is, there are two criteria for people with disabilities. One is what is your ability and what is your disability. So for me, in the ability criteria, I matched almost all the services. But for the disability criteria, I was allowed only in one. So there was no connection between what is your disability and what are your abilities and what is the job requirement, right? So that was another strange thing. And that I really felt was unfair. And that's why I went to court. And it took 3 years. And the judgment came. And I'd say this, but people think this is a joke. But I honestly say this, and I think Saloni will also agree with me. If you want to destroy your enemies, and do it subtly, like not letting them know. And I've said this everywhere and it becomes very controversial and people don't understand it, but seriously, if you really want to destroy someone's life, tell them they're very, very smart and they should give civil services exam. Because what you're doing to someone is in their 20s, you're locking them inside a single room. And they are struggling to do the same thing again and again and again over years, in their most productive years. They're locked inside a room. It's a financial burden, it's a physical burden, in fact I call it torture. It's a financial torture, it's an emotional torture, it's a mental torture, it's a physical torture, because imagine sitting over the same books for 20 hours a day and you break your back, you get, almost everybody gets all those back pains, and you don't eat well so you gain weight. Your mental this thing, because all your school classmates and your college classmates have actually gone ahead in life and they are doing so well and they're earning so much, but you're stuck inside that one room doing the same thing again and again. So it's actually a self-inflicted torture which you do to yourself. So one doesn't want to give this exam that many times, right?
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
And before I go to Saloni, so when you got the result in 2014,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
did you expect being in the top 3, let alone being All India rank 1?
At that point, I just want this to get over. Because like I said, you really don't want to be doing it at that point. And I'd done it for so many years. So I did think I had done really well and I should be in the top 10 if life was fair. See, that's another caveat, right? And as a person with disability, you constantly have to, start thinking like that if life is fair, then this should happen. But because life is not mostly fair, or you feel that it's not, so you don't know what happens. But yeah, so I did think I had done well enough to be in the top 10, but nobody should be thinking they're going to be the best, because you really don't know how good others are, or
Yeah. And Saloni, I mean, you interact with a lot of young people who want to enter the services, right? There are millions of them who try, right? Just a few hundred make it, right? And for you to, I mean, many of them come from engineering backgrounds, very few with MBA background, engineering plus MBA in the case of Veera Singhal, right? So tell us a little bit about the kind of struggles that you see today. I mean, every second day, it could be every day, but at least every second day we have stories from Kota, for example, like someone is committed suicide. It's not easy, right? It's a lot of struggle and sacrifice. I'll come to the sacrifice part later, but the struggle to get there.
At the outset, I would like to thank Republic TV for curating this very unique panel. Why do I say it's unique? Because I'm the contrast here. So if you want to train for civil services, you have aspirations, I will have a viewpoint on it. If you get selected, you get rank 1, and then you talk about struggles, we have Ira here.
Yeah.
And then if you don't get selected, no need to worry. We are again here to help you and get you back into the industry and get you an employment. So I think this is a beautifully crafted panel. I would like to compliment that. Coming back to the struggles of aspirants. So you see, as Ira was mentioning, that it is torture in all the forms. I would like to share a joke with you, which is a mathematical joke, that the probability of saving somebody if they jump from 30th floor is higher than you qualifying this exam. So failure in this exam is certain. You know, whatever you are, whoever you are, you're an engineer, you're from elite institutions, you are bound to fail. I mean, I see the probability of failure higher. Coming back to engineers, 40 to 45% students who get selected, you know, they are engineers. Now, in India, only 20% engineers are employable. Why I'm giving all these numbers, I come from economics background, so I understand numbers more. When only 20% of these students who are engineers are employable, what will rest of them do? They would look out for coveted jobs. And civil services is one of the most coveted jobs in the
Correct.
country. As you said that every parent wants their child to be a civil servant. The reason for that is that we associate a certain kind of prestige with civil services. You know, when I take a class of 200 students and I ask them what do they want to be, most of them want to be civil servants because they think that this is shortcut to success. But this shortcut comes at a very high cost.
Is that how they look at it? Shortcut to
Yes,
success?
yes, because the eligibility criteria is you being a graduate, you being 21 years old. Now they don't know that the struggle of the exam and different phases and the kind of failure and the kind of toll it will take on you, plus the challenges which come to you once you get selected, you know, later in the service as an officer. We hardly talk about it. So we need such forums where we're talking about all these issues also.
Yes.
So for students, it is a shortcut to success because you just need to be 21 and you just need to be a graduate. Now, when we talk about the challenges and the kind of stress they have, there is a study that IIT Delhi did in 2021. And you know, the psychological strain on the civil services aspirants, it's very high. Why mention Kota? Why not Old Rajendra Nagar? We recently had a tragedy in Old Rajendra Nagar.
Yes.
You have to come to Delhi. It is very expensive to come to Delhi. You live in dingy rooms. You eat tiffins which are not healthy. Then the students who prepare for civil services are in the age group of 20 to 28 years, you know. That is the period when you fall in love. That is the period when you explore your talents. But these students are just sitting in shady, dingy rooms with their books, thinking that one day they will become IS officers and, you know, the world will look up to them and they will be famous on social media or they will bring any kind of revolution. So the idea of civil services is very different from the reality of civil services. That is the point that I wanted to draw.
Fantastic point that you made. They want to be famous on social media. I've never heard that for an IAS officer or an
that's
IPS officer. Is it? I mean, let me ask the IAS officer. There was a time, Ira, when we were speaking. I mean,
Yeah.
just before coming up on stage, IAS officers or IPS officers were never in the limelight. They
That's
never
precisely
wanted
what-
to be in the limelight.
No, that's
right?
the job definition.
Yes.
Anonymity. It's civil services is anonymity. So, yeah,
no,
but
I want to make a point, and you can take that question. There is one aspect of it, one set of people or youngsters, right, want to get into UPSC, like she said, maybe because it's the
Social status.
social status, right? But there is another set, like yourself. I mean, you wanted to, for you it's a sacrifice, and the reason I want to share this with the audience. I don't know how many of you know the kind of salaries that IAS officers get. At least the honest IAS officers, when she had a great job in 2009, 2010, I wouldn't put the numbers out there, but she was getting paid 3 times more 15 years back. And I won't put the numbers out, but it's a sacrifice.
yeah, absolutely.
For those who are
So
honest.
a fresher today with what I passed out in 2008 gets 3-4 times more today than I do right now after these many years. So that's not a hidden fact from anybody, yeah.
But do you think there's a reform that's required there? Because there is one school of thought, right? When we pay a graduate, a package, when we think
Yeah.
of, giving a graduate an amount of salary, we
Yeah.
think we want the journalist to be honest,
Right.
While at Republic,
Right.
so we will pay him well,
Yeah.
right? Is that school of thought also there in the government? Is that required in the government that you pay your officers, your employees, your administrative staff well, so there is lesser corruption in the system?
See, when it comes to corruption, you cannot say that it's a function of the salaries. It's
But is it a
also-
factor?
It is a factor for sure, because the temptation in today's world is much more, and especially when you have kids and you have families, and they go out in the world, and then they compare the financial lifestyle that they lead with an IS honest officer, and I don't just mean the IS, I mean all the services that come through this, versus the lifestyle that even a corporate sector employee leads. Now, I'm not even talking about people who are in businesses. that definitely does get to be a factor, you know, because you all want, if you're living in a city like Delhi, an average outing for 4 people is anywhere between 6,000 to 8,000, right?
Correct.
And that's not easy to afford on government salaries.
Right.
So, I mean, and you can't tell your kids constantly, no, we're never going out. So that sort of thing does obviously affect the psyche. But corruption, I don't think is just out of that. It's not. Mostly, it's an ethical issue. It's an issue of how much you want for yourself, how much. Because see, instead of that, you can just quit and go into the corporate sector and earn that well, right? If you're that smart, you can come start a business, you can quit. And a lot of people have done that. So corruption doesn't become the means for that. But I do think that the salaries should be at par with the talent that you're trying to get in, which is what we do when we talk about the corporate sector, right?
Right.
You get paid by your talent. So that, I think, obviously needs to be addressed at some point. But, of course, corruption does not justify that. Corruption, you can always get out. You can always start a business. You can
Right.
always, get a corporate job. A lot of people have done that also.
I'm assuming the perks have reduced.
Perks have definitely reduced, yeah. Yeah.
And what kind of perks? I mean, just asking, because the view that many people have,
Yeah.
right? I'm talking about the general public,
Yeah.
general view that it's a nice job. Like she said, it's about the social status. You're an IAS officer. You call the shots, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of perks,
Yeah.
right? But is that the reality?
You do call the shots a lot of times. I mean, the decisions that you get to take, you can't imagine taking them at that age anywhere else. In any other job, on any other platform, you cannot. It is, I mean, the amount of things you can change, the amount you can affect the world around you, it's insane. It's just
And I want to add
unparalleled.
to it that the kind of personal exposure that you get,
Yes.
you get to work in different ministries, A person who's an engineer would not imagine working in education ministry or
Yes.
health ministry. Then the regional diversity you get to experience, you might be posted anywhere because it's all India services, of course, in your cadre, but in other services, it's all India. So you have this kind of exposure which is regionally, geographically very diverse.
Yeah.
Then the kind of teams you're managing, when you're a manager in corporate, you're 25 years old, you hardly get to manage a team of 2-3 people.
Yes.
But let's say you get selected when you're 23, you're managing 100, 150 people under you. The kind of decision-making abilities you develop, that is why people, once they move out of civil services, like Ira said, that you can always take up a corporate job later on. When they do that, they get valued in corporate sector a lot. So
Right.
there's this increasing trend these days that you get into the service and then you leave the service.
And how
you
many
move
years
to
do they
corporate.
typically move out?
3-4 years.
That's it?
Yeah, people are building their own startups.
See,
We
that's
have-
what, right? When you compare the salaries, and a lot of these kids are very young when they come in. I came in
Yes.
very old and with a lot of experience and knowing exactly what I wanted out of my life.
Yes.
But most kids have this dream because that has been inculcated into them in childhood from their parents, and I see those parents all around me. So they have a very different view, and then they get in and then they see the world and they're like, wait, that person is less caliber than me in their imagination maybe, but let's say on paper you can say that maybe that person was lesser caliber and he's earning 5 times more than me. Why am I being poor here?
I have students who have got selected, but they did not join, and they've started their own things,
Yeah.
and they moved to
That also
corporate.
happens? Like you
yes,
don't-
Yes.
yes,
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
because you understand that your
Right.
salary will be so less, and
Yeah.
You
outside
gave
the
the
world,
exam for your
world is
parents.
valuing you more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gave the exam for your parents
Yeah.
for their dreams, so
Yeah.
now you can pursue your dreams.
Also, once you qualify the exam, you kind of get branded,
Yeah.
So you can move into coaching industry, you can move into ed tech,
Yeah.
you can move into corporate. So this brand which you have with you, nobody can take that away from you. That you qualify the civil services exam, and it is one of the toughest exam in the world.
Yeah. Do they, let me put it this way. Do you come under pressure from politicians? Are IAS officers under pressure?
So yes,
We've seen it. I mean,
yes,
I've
that
personal
does
experience.
happen. I've been lucky to not really face
They're
that.
scared of you? That's just what you can
Yes,
say.
in
It's okay.
most
They're scared of
cases,
honest officers.
it's very tough for just anybody on the road to ask me to do something which isn't completely legal. I don't give off that vibe where you can tell me to do something shady. So yes, I've
But-
had a
but
lot
they
of
do.
people. I've had a lot of people not like me for political people for those reasons that remove her, remove her, remove her.
Huh.
And to me, I don't care about the posting, and I don't care about that. If I want to work, so I want to make a difference, and whatever posting you get, you can make a difference.
No, why
Like
do
she
you
was
say-
saying, right? We get to work on everything.
Okay, why do you say I don't care about the posting? Let me phrase it this way. How do they post you? Is there any bias or any? Do you think postings happen in a very, very fair way, or do biases come in?
Okay, we're all human beings.
You're politically being correct, right?
No, I'm being realistic here.
Okay.
I'm being very realistic here. We're all
Yes.
human beings. We all carry our biases. Expecting extreme fairness, like I said, fairness doesn't exist in life like that, right? So sometimes I think this is something that most officers towards retirement tell you, that it's going to balance out. There will be some good postings, there will be some bad postings, and for everybody it balances out. Over the period of your whole career, everybody will have some good postings, everybody will have some bad postings. Has happened to me already in 10 years. I've had some amazing postings, which I think were way before my time. And then I've had some postings where I had to deal with a lot of other things also.
What are the other things?
Bad bosses, people just not interested in getting things done, those
Red
kind
tape.
of things. Sorry?
Okay, the red tape and
Not red
corruption?
tape, no. Just different motivations. And
Right.
not corruption motivations, just different motivations.
Like what?
Self-aggrandization, those kind of things. So those kind of things do happen.
Okay, let me put it this way: Is Arunachal Pradesh? You're in Arunachal Pradesh, right? Is Arunachal Pradesh a good posting, punishment posting?
No,
You
it's a
can be honest,
cadre,
you
this
can-
thing. It's a cadre. So my cadre is called AGMUT, which is AGMUT, which is Arunachal, Goa, Mizoram, and all the union territories. And now JNK and Ladakh also come into that.
Yes.
So in my cadre, most people get posted across segments.
In your experience, have you seen that physical disability being a disadvantage in your posting?
I mean, that was where I started from, right? In civil services, the first thing that happened to me was the disadvantage that your disability gave you. So, that biases do exist.
Do exist.
I would say that they do exist in
Do exist.
people's minds. Very few people's minds, but they do exist. In a few people's minds, they do.
I'm happy that I'm sitting on stage with an IS officer who's speaking so candidly. I mean, you don't get IS officers, they don't come as often. But the reason I'm asking you this question is because in the news, we have seen a lot of IAS, IPS officers recently, right? Saloni mentioned the social media craze.
Yeah,
I mean, many
yeah.
of them have, it's almost, there's a status update every day, every morning, and there are articles written, there's a PR team around some IAS,
Really?
IPS officers.
Wow.
No, it's true, you know it.
I don't
it
know about
happens,
the PR
right?
teams, okay, yeah.
No, but I mean, how do you because I'm assuming, and from whatever I know about you, you're in this because of your pure passion to serve the country, right?
Yeah.
For you, it's a sacrifice,
Yeah.
right? You choose to do this because you love your job so much, you love your country so much. But do you think somewhere that essence is being lost as years pass by with the UPSC
I
system?
wouldn't say over the years because I don't know how it was earlier. But definitely, this is not about serving the nation anymore.
Anymore.
No. The way, so I answer a lot of questions for students over my social media. That's how I use my social media. I do, people message me, I reply back, and I also do counseling sessions and all. And from what I see, it is not even about earning money, it is not even about social status, it's about becoming a celebrity in some way. It's so crazy because your job is literally to be anonymous. See, we do use social media, a lot of us, and the purpose that is meant to be is to actually spread awareness and information, and that's how it should be used. We're not supposed to publicize ourselves as celebrities, pose in different ways. I mean, you have personal photos of, small things which matter to you, right?
Right.
Like, for example, I love traveling. So for me, putting on that is like, okay, these are my memories from travel. Or with my nieces and nephews, those kind of these things. But for a lot of them, it's just like showing off in that way, which is not correct, because your job is not to show off. Your job is to actually inspire the world. You can't be inspiring like an actress would, right? Your job is to inspire people to do the right thing, to follow, to actually care for the social causes, to care for the world around you. And it shouldn't be to be a celebrity and think of yourself as a celebrity in that sense. So the trend has changed, the mindset has changed, and I think it's for the better that you use social media,
Yes.
but it should be for the right way, reasons, and
Correct.
for the right causes. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be for your personal aggrandization, like I said, but more for how you can use that medium to spread the right thing. So, for example, if you remember, there was a crisis in JNK at one point, and a lot of people were not able to connect. So all my batchmates from there
Yes,
sent me
yes, I
messages
remember
saying, can you please post it on your social media? These are the contact numbers of the DCs in case anybody has families that they need to connect with and they're not able to. So they can use our numbers. So those kind of things. If there is a flood or a disaster, you can spread that information through that. So, and of course, to keep your channel, to keep that medium alive, you can't have just those postings. You will need to do a little more to keep that active, because that's how short the attention span of today's youth is. But that's how you should be using it, as a positive medium and not for self-aggrandization. I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
And like Saloni was mentioning earlier, that you are doing your job. So it shouldn't be, like she was saying, every day you go to class and you take a picture, I went to class. That can't,
Yeah. Actually, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
So young people want to look at great power, but they don't want to look at the great responsibility part. Like Ida mentioned that, she has to take so much of responsibility for her actions. She has to be thoughtful of what she's putting out, because people are looking up to her. She's inspiring people. So the picture that youth gets is that, okay, you can do whatever, and you have a lot of power, but then they don't understand that with this responsibility, there's accountability, and their actions have consequences, which is what we need to talk about more.
Yeah. And because Ira is speaking, I will ask some controversial questions to Ira as well. So Ira, is there corruption in the system, and how open is it, and what are your experiences dealing with corruption in the system?
I have not had to deal with it like that. Like I said, people don't come up to me and say. But yes, so when you post it in the field postings, a lot of times you will get complaints about your staff, and you must handle it at that moment swiftly, surely, and fairly.
Right.
And don't be a person who's on either side. Actually objectively look at the problem. Look at, did that happen, did that not happen, and take action.
I've had, in my experiences as a journalist, some IAS officers, especially women, say that there are politicians who, they have a different attitude towards women officers, in the sense that, they feel they can do anything and get away with it, right? Like but they want to fight back, saying we're not pushovers, you can't just bulldoze decisions on us, right? Does that happen? Does it?
Not
In
in
your
my
experience?
experience, not in my experience. But I'm too junior for that experience till now. I'm not in my experience. I have had all my other things have listened to when I've said that this is how we should proceed with a particular case. So that has not been my experience, but I do think that would probably be happening at higher levels. So.
Gender biases, do they exist in
Um,
postings or in the way that women
So
officers
I'll tell you
are treated?
something. And this is a larger perspective thing. If you think about it, even in the corporate sector, unfortunately, the way social fabric is structured, women have had to take it easy in the main years where your career jumps, because you get you have children. You are the one who has to primarily be the caretaker, and even in the corporate, women end up taking a slightly easier role than the male counterparts, and hence that gap starts coming in right from them. So it's in your early 30s, late 20s, the kind of roles that you accept at that point, because you have to like a lot of my batchmates, when the district magistrate postings came, they were pregnant or they were family planning, so they said no, we can't do this. So then that opportunity got lost to them, while the male counterparts got to take it, right?
Correct.
So I think that sort of thing that happens, and that's a problem across the world currently, that women end up having in those main years, when you get that really challenging sort of posting, you end up having to step
Take a
back
step back, yeah.
because of family issues, and that obviously then creates that gap in the longer term also.
Got
And
it.
of course, there are specific postings where there have never been women officers.
Why?
I'm not the right person to know why. Hopefully that changes by the time we come.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I want to add something
Yeah.
to this, something very interesting. In so many years, since independence, till now we've not had any woman cabinet secretary. And Ira would agree to
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
Exactly, like I said.
Let me
specific-
put the follow-up question to her. Which
Yeah.
are those posts where there have never been women IAS officers?
I said this,
secretaries?
we don't have any cabinet secretary who has been a woman,
Yes.
And Ira would know better that most of the DM postings, as she's talking about, women do not get it. So, as an outsider, I feel that as it is in every field, there is some gender bias in
Yes.
civil services.
And in fact,
also.
I will tell you this. It's less for us in this IAS and all.
Yeah, but
it's
in other
actually more
services-
for the state services.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Women who come into the state services, it's more for them.
Hmm.
They are less likely to get the same roles that their male counterparts.
And to complement what just Ira said, I'm a new mom. My son is only 2 months old. And I was reading about this concept which is called the burden of time, The burden of time is against women. I'll tell you how. Everyone has 24 hours. Time is a resource. So we have to split it between work and our second shift, which is at home, maybe, even if you have a lot of help, but maybe monitoring all those things and taking care of the child. Then your career needs you at the same time when your body clock is
Yes,
ticking.
yes,
So
yes.
that's there. Then thirdly, aging is also not on women's side. Men would be appreciated for salt and pepper. But if women have gray hair or if women are aging, you are
Yes.
looked at differently. So, maybe people will think that you will be less efficient if you're aging. So this burden of time is against women. And it is reflected in every field, not just civil services, maybe academics, corporate. So it's there in every field.
Yeah, the reason I asked you that question was because we have a mindset and we have a political leadership that wants to promote, meritocracy, that wants a sort of corporate
Structured.
structure and a corporate thinking in the way the country functions, also because you have to keep up with the times, right? I don't know whether that is percolated into the administrative system. And the reason I say that is because when I look at our own company in Republic, most of our leaders are women across different channels. Like if you look at Republic TV English, Republic Bangla, Republic Bharat, and even Republic Kannada, we have women leaders across the board, right? And it's fantastic. It's liberating because that we break the stereotypes here, right
Yeah.
here. But I'm not sure that is percolating in the government
So
system.
the good thing is today, so it doesn't start from the government system. It starts from the social fabric of how many parents are allowing their daughters to sit for this exam. Think about it
What's
like
the
that.
ratio like? What's the ratio?
In my batch, it was one of the highest,
Okay.
which was I think 31%. But it does not cross 20-25% usually.
But the
And-
trend is on the increasing side.
Yeah,
It's
but
increasing.
you must realize it is because more parents are letting their daughters have that time of preparation before marriage.
Right.
That is where the problem starts. That because you have to get married, so the number of years you're going to waste in preparation, that is, cutting off your options for marriage, right? So parents are not happy with their daughters preparing. And that is where the whole thing starts. So if there are 20 women in a 100 people batch, there will be 2 women in a 10 people posting at higher up, right? It's the same ratios that go up. And that is why you will always have lesser women in those posts. And so the more women that come into the system, the more postings will get opened. It's as simple as that.
Right.
But there's this peculiar insight that 18% of successful candidates are women with children. So mothers, 18,
18, but no, but
Right.
that's between the 100% of women.
No, that is among the successful candidates. That women,
Total 18%?
yeah, 18%.
Among those who crack it.
Yeah, it is McKinsey's report. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
they are women with children. So
So you're saying
mothers are
18
coming up after,
18
they have
of
kids.
the 1,000 candidates who are selected,
Yes.
180 are
yes,
with women
yes,
with children?
Yes.
Wow.
That's the
a-
statistics I'm
that's
hearing
a
for the first time.
It's
Yeah.
a McKinsey report.
Yeah, okay.
very interesting stat.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what, right? So now husbands are more supportive than parents. Imagine.
Yeah, thank God.
Which
for
is how we want it to
Yeah,
be.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Hats off to all those men who were.
Yeah.
that. Okay. So to the next generation, or those who aspire to be UPSC candidates, so they want to write the exam, aspirants, and enter the services. What would you tell them? What should be their motivation? What should they really expect in the system?
This is going to be a long answer.
Oh, please go ahead.
One, don't do it for someone else. Don't do it because your parents told you or because you think seeing the world on social media, it sounds really cool and it sounds very, celebrity-like. Don't do it because you have some vague idea of what this is. Do it because you actually want to do something for the nation. Because that's the only way. This is not a job. It's called a service.
Correct.
So the whole point is you are coming to serve. You're not coming for yourself. You're not coming to have, and I'll be honest, we don't have work-life balance. That doesn't exist. We don't get holidays. We don't, we get to.
You're always on the job.
Yeah,
Always.
you're always on the job.
Always.
I'm wife of a civil servant, so I can agree to this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
I'm a
always on the
journalist. I kind of understand.
Yeah,
We don't
right?
need to know
So,
that Saturdays,
so don't
Sundays.
come in because someone else wants you to do this. The
Right.
only way you can do this is if you actually want to do this for yourself. Like I said, it's a torture on every level. So don't, you can't ever go through this without you wanting it really. Secondly, it's not like a career option in that sense. It has to be about service. It can't be like, this sounds like the grandest career option. A friend of mine these days calls it the national hobby. So it can't be that. It has to be that you really want to do this. Secondly, always have a backup plan. Always know when you're going to get out of this and what you're going to do when you get out. So a lot of times I tell candidates, please have a backup plan in motion before you start doing this, so that when you come out, you are not suddenly at sea, suddenly lost. Where do I go from here, right? Thirdly, be very realistic of your chances, of your expectation from yourself. And I don't mean that you're not smart enough. Everybody is smart enough. But the problem is, are you actually able to put in that hard work? It is about having that self-discipline. Nobody else is going to be able to tell you, no, you sit and you study. And you have to do this yourself, right? So you may want to do it also for your own reasons, but then knowing yourself and the amount of hard work you can really put in, be realistic about that. Fourthly, be able to self-analyze. Be able to really see yourself for who you are, understand your motivations, understand your desires, understand your own expectations from life, be able to judge your own performance and be able to judge who you are internally and then correct yourself. You can't be somebody who's not able to admit your own faults.
Yeah.
Because that is how you will fail the first time and then fail a second time and a third and a fourth time. You cannot fail the third time if you're somebody who is able to admit to themselves and seeks out to correct themselves. So I think if you follow these few things, you can do this.
Let me ask you, I mean, I don't know how this question slipped out. I won't take names, right?
Yeah.
We have someone like an Ira Singhal who has, you're an example of merit. And not once, twice, three times, the fourth time, All India rank 1. And then you have people who try to manipulate the system, right? Try to fake their disability, use their contacts, use resources, right? I won't take names, but you know the reference that I'm making, right? What are your thoughts on that? And it's important you say it because you've come up the hard way.
I think it's a sad reflection of society that you don't even see the problems that people with disabilities get to face when you're taking away a chance from a person who's managed to get to that level. And this is, okay, so just to put it in perspective for people, because most people, if you don't see a person with disability around you, you don't actually understand this. Imagine a child with disability just having to attend school. How difficult it is. Not just attending a class, to reach the classroom. To actually travel from your home to the classroom. In Delhi, you imagine there's a bus.
Yeah.
Leave aside Delhi. Every small town, is there a school bus? No. You have to take a rickshaw or you have to walk. I know in Arunachal we have schools that are 3 kilometers away for my babies. My 6-year-old and a 7-year-old has to go 2 kilometers down the mountain, up the mountain to reach the classroom. So a child with disability, just to get that basic school education, that is so tough. And then imagine that they've gotten that, they've reached through that level, and then they have to go to college, which is another level. And now we have accessible infrastructure in schools. We have audiobooks and you have
Yes.
video lectures and all. You didn't have that back then, right? You didn't have that 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
imagine being that child who has had to struggle to get to that level, and then you don't have like I said, it's a service. You don't have the mindset to even think of that. You're taking away an opportunity from, and by the way, why do we need reservation for people with disabilities? Because the corporate sector does not feel like they can be profitable enough. See, corporate sector works on profitability, and that's fair. That's absolutely fair. They are meant to think of it like that, right? Government is the one opportunity that you get because the world has been unfair, so it's like a balance out in that sense, right? Your reservation is meant to balance out the unfairness that the society has put you through. And the opportunities that were taken away from you, you get that a level playing field sort of thing. It's leveling. You're not allowing that also to happen. What sort of a person are you? What are your ethics and morals that you can't even see that this is meant for a person who has actually had to struggle through that right from the moment of birth? A lot of kids with disabilities are abandoned by their families. Imagine what is the condition of the parents who bring up a child with disability with the whole world telling them, "Arey, इसका तो कुछ नहीं होगा. Oh my God, अरे बेचारा, आय हाय, तुम्हारा तो बच्चा ऐसा है." Imagine that parent has struggled through that. That parent has made that effort, brought their child up to that level, and you can't even see that person get that level playing field. That is how shallow you are, and you're coming into a job which is about service. So I think it's quite shameful and quite, very sad that you're not even empathetic. I'm not talking sympathy. I'm talking just have that empathy at least. And that's what the whole job is about, right?
I wonder what the motivation is for such people. And of course, I'm making a direct reference to the Pooja Ketkar case, right? Had close connections, family background of people who've been in the services, right? The motivation may not be the same motivation that you have or other honest IAS officers have.
Probably. I can get.
You know, my question is the motivation. The motivation to take such a route. And how
Yeah.
many people take such routes? I mean, in your experience, have you?
No.
It's very rare.
It's very rare. Because the criteria is 40% disability. That is usually something that is quite visible and quite,
Yeah.
And like I said, most people with disabilities do come from really disadvantaged backgrounds also. In India, disability is also a factor of poverty and struggles in the family. So, I've not come across cases like that personally.
Yeah, Saloni, today there's an ecosystem around the UPSC examinations, right? How do you view, you mentioned Rajendra Nagar.
Yeah.
So, for that to stay relevant, right, UPSC has to be, a job that people fancy for
Right.
years and decades to come, right? How, can you tell us a little bit more about this ecosystem, because you've seen it up close,
Yeah.
right? You work with people who aspire to be
Yeah.
in the UPSC,
Yeah.
to write the UPSC examinations.
So if we talk about UPSC coaching, it's a 10,000 crore industry on its own, and then the paraphernalia around it, in Rajendra Nagar, the people are leaving their own houses and giving them out on rent because they would be better off living in a posh society in Gurgaon, and the rental in Rajendra Nagar is so high that they don't need to work. So the property prices have increased. The entire ecosystem around it, maybe the restaurants or the tiffin delivery or the libraries, quote unquote, the libraries, infamous libraries, which were part of the tragedy that recently happened in Rajendra Nagar. So that entire ecosystem is about exploiting these kids who have dream of becoming a civil servant. And their parents, some of them sell off their agricultural land, some of them, are not eating properly just to send their kids to Rajendra Nagar so that one day when they become IAS officers, their status in society will be elevated, their economic status will be elevated. And most of them are false hopes, as I said in the beginning, that the rate of failure is higher in this examination. So all the people, it's like investing, if you know that it's a high risk, high return investment. So the risk is also very high if the return is high. So this entire ecosystem of Rajendra Nagar, in a way, is robbing youth of what they should be doing right now. These are young kids who are spending off their money, their physical health, their emotional health. The suicide rate is increasing. The depression amongst these candidates is increasing. And there are no forums to address it. In school, college, it is all institutionalized. You have counselors, you can seek help from teachers. But in coaching, the role of a teacher is they would just come to class, they would deliver their lecture and they'll go. So basically, you're nobody's responsibility. When you talk about school and college, at least there's an institution, that cares for you. But here we don't have that kind of formalization. And that is the need of the hour, which is which should be there, because these students, we're not talking about 1 lakh, 2 lakh students. This is 10 lakh students who just appear for the examination. And more than 50 lakh students come to Rajendra Nagar every year.
50 lakh?
Yes.
50
yes.
lakh every
but
year?
you know-
Yes.
To Rajendra
Because
Nagar?
It's a
My God.
huge
Like I said, national hobby,
50
right?
lakh?
It's a national hobby, and it's not just Rajendra Nagar. It's Mukherjee Nagar for Hindi medium. Then there are other, regional like Lucknow, Allahabad, Chandigarh. So I'm talking about all of them collectively. That they come to different cities. They move from rural areas, and these aspirants are called rural aspirants.
I think what we need is actual career counseling
Yes.
at school level. That would make a huge difference, because what happens is you don't know what is there out there in the
Yeah, you
world.
don't know your
parents
options.
don't have the
Yeah.
in small towns you don't have the awareness as parents, right?
Correct.
So civil services is something that has been happening since the British. It is continuing, and the social status stays with it. So your parents also think of that as the career option that exists.
Also,
It's an easy
when during
thinking thing.
British era, when our parents were there, and colonial hangover was there, they used to think that becoming an IAS is the best job out there. But now with MNCs and
Yeah.
the kind of globalization we
Yeah.
have, the kind of digital exposure we have, the opportunities are increasing,
Yeah. Yes.
and we need to talk more about them.
Yes.
Students need to know
Yes.
about.
At
I
school
meet
level,
students
and
every day.
especially at school level
Yes.
with the parents.
School,
In fact,
college level.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
handle this problem differently.
Fantastic conversation that I've had with Ira Singhal and Saloni Khanna. Thank you very much. I've learned a lot from this conversation. Inspiring stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you. To all the people watching, I'm here for India Women's Summit. I just want to end this conversation with 2 lines. शहर का तब्दील होना, शाद रहना और खुश होना. शहर का तब्दील होना, which is becoming progressive. शाद रहना, which is becoming sad. और खुश होना, रौनकें जितनी भी हैं यहाँ, औरतों से हैं. रौनकें जितनी भी हैं यहाँ, औरतों से हैं.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Ira Singhal and Saloni Khanna. I have to say, every word that you said truly resonated with me, and I'm sure it did with everyone sitting here, everyone watching here at home. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Niranjan. Let's have you felicitate our guests, and thank you so much for joining us here on Republic. A huge round of applause, please.